How's everyone doing? Cool, cool, cool. So yes, we have an amazing panel today, and I'll quickly just give a quick introduction of myself. My name's Kwame Delfish. I'm a painter, multi-medium artist. I paint, as you can see, paintings in my back, but behind me, but also to this conversation, I'm also familiar with collaborations and the difficulties of them. I've worked with several companies, with the Mint, Frito-Lay, a lot of beverage and food companies, and also in business, in hair, which is another medium I work in. So, let's start this conversation. From what I understand, if there's any questions right off the bat, knowing the topic that anyone wants to ask, we'll start by, receiving those questions, and we'll do it like a, question answer kind of base vibe here. So does anyone out there want to kind of start us off? The panel's here, we're ready to answer any questions. And also, yes, as Kevin said, you can leave questions in the chat as well, and we'll answer any questions that come in the chat. Maybe we'll also start by, sorry, before we get to that, I should let some of the panelists introduce themselves as well, starting with Aaron.
Hi, Aaron, Jan, he, him pronouns. I'm a theater artist, director, playwright, musical theater book writer, also dramaturg. I do a lot of work, sometimes in schools, sometimes in theaters, sometimes in community centers. I have a collective called Silk Bath Collective, where we tell trilingual stories of the Chinese diaspora. And yeah, I think when we talk about collaboration, what really excites me these days is really long development processes that are not just like the creative artists. Like, how do we get designers in earlier? How do we get community consultants in earlier? How do we build things more holistically, as opposed to being like, okay, I have a draft, I have blocking, let's go, or I have choreography, I have sound, let's go. Like, how do we start to like weave disciplines in from the very beginning is something I'm really, really interested in talking about today.
Cool. So we have their your name's not on, it's not on there, beside Aaron, Zoom user.
Hey, sorry about that.
Shakeil, yes,
Shakeil Rollock here.
Yes.
Not a Zoom user, as you can totally see, so bear with me.
Didn't want to assume, sorry about that.
Oh, it changed. Amazing. Yeah, dancer, choreographer, theater artist, more recently involved in musical theater because I have a passion for storytelling. And I feel that storytelling is a very collaborative form when it's most successful. Yeah, and I'm just open to speaking about how working with your main medium in tandem with other mediums is really important, because I truly feel, for me, successful art has two things: a strong why, and also involves others.
Yeah, that was really cool. That was really cool, Shakeil. I like that. Tandy, you want to follow?
Hello. My name's Itandi Munro. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a professional performance and visual artist. So my background has always been dance. I grew up as a dancer, everything that you can think of. I've always loved to move and left it for a long time, actually, to pursue fine arts. So I have a degree in photography and jewelry design and metalsmithing. And I'm always looking for ways to like mix all of those things together within my practice. So my own artistic practice, I really try and focus on the multiplicity of everything that I'm interested in. I've even dabbled in music creation, but mostly I'm really focused on continuing collaborations and growing my network. So how can my current collaborations stay? How can we continue to grow so that there's never a kind of like loss or disconnect from something that you've worked on in the past? Yeah, and I am currently exploring different ways of moving my body that I haven't done in a very, very long time, which I find exciting and challenging.
Thank you for that. Sorry about that, Itandi. Did I say it correctly? Perfect.
Yep.
There we go. Okay, so yeah, let's. Does anyone have any questions for us? Let's start the questions. Keep them going, and I think we'll have an amazing conversation. We got a shy crowd today. No one. I see someone lighting up, and no, nobody wants to take first go at anything. Okay, let's start with just collaborations. Are there any collaborations out there? Any questions? Like anyone have any anything that they would like to discuss that's happening right now for them? For example, I'll just throw myself out there. And this might start conversations. You know, sometimes as an artist, opportunities come and, you know, it plays between, you know, an opportunity for yourself as an artist, and then, you know, there could be like a moral thing attached to it, or, you know, an issue that doesn't really, you know, jive or represent your community, and kind of doesn't really speak to what the message you're putting out there. How do you adapt to that? And just for example, I'll put a recent job out there. So I've worked making coins for the Canadian Mint. Two of my coins, two out of the three coins were for Black History Month. And, you know, a lot of questions that come up with my community is, you know, how does a Black History Month coin still have the queen on the other side of it, right? How come we don't talk about that? And sometimes it's the difference between someone buying a coin and someone not buying a coin. So, you know, cool, obviously to show yourself as nationally is something that, you know, we as artists, you know, we look for these achievements because we know how they can help us out in grants and different things like that. But now I was given the opportunity to be on the short list of artists that get to draw King Charles portrait. Very difficult. How do I, you know, deal with that? It's something I'm presently dealing with. You know, it plays against, you know, me as an artist, obviously, to say that you have that kind of piece seen on every note, you know, especially as a Black artist, to reach that kind of platform is amazing. But then there's the other half of, you know, some see it as, you know, look at the monarchy has done, you know, to us and or the community for years, and it plays on, you know, how the community sees that. If I'm representing the community, you know, and pieces that speak towards, you know, a positive light in the community and speak towards some of these things, how do I ignore that topic for personal gain, you know? So I don't know if that kind of like sparked any ideas or any thoughts to anyone, you know, if anyone's kind of in those situations, or, you know, or in collabos and are dealing with those things, or if anyone on the panel could kind of speak to that, or had any relations to that. Yeah, Shakeil, cool.
So for me, I find there's a lot of challenging moments where being a Black artist in a white space come up, I've chosen to, go down the path of musical theater, which is well, it's shifting now, but a very white industry. And words of advice that I got once, which I found really important, I stick to: it doesn't matter how you got there, it's what you do when you get there, right? And I've learned for myself to always allow myself to come through, regardless if it's creating a dance, portraying a character, creating even music. There has to be aspects of me in it in order for it to live. I don't just replicate what is expected. So you say, like, for example, you doing that portrait of the king. If you do it in your style, that's still like you infusing yourself in there. I do understand that there are moments where, yes, we have to make money. We have to, be a part of a certain type of project. There are stipulations that we have to follow, but you can still always find ways of putting yourself in it. And, one time I was told, like, even just simply being alive, being Black is an act of protest. So, like, allowing myself to be in these forms of art is my way of, like, kind of even challenging it. I'm in a show right now playing a character who's traditionally white, and this character challenges the main character, which is usually a white woman, and now having a Black man challenging this white woman. How does that read? How do you work with that? And it's been successful by me just allowing myself to be facilitated through whatever medium.
Okay, so I'll add to that. Is there a moment, because these are things that I also feel, is there a moment you ever get tired of doing the most, let's say, like having to overcompensate, overachieve, just to kind of like prove yourself? Is there a moment, especially in those spaces where you just kind of like, why do I always have to like do the most?
When I first graduated, there were a lot of those moments, but then I realized the second I take a step back and just be myself, I'm doing it's 20 times more successful than me stressing and having to put forth and be the strongest, jump higher, run faster just to be at par. But if I just do it my way, that's better than me trying to do it my way. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I find that it took me time to realize what it means to be myself in a process. But once I started implementing that, I found I wasn't doing the most, I was just doing me.
That's cool. That's cool. And I'm glad you said that, because I actually, that's something I kind of say out of my experience, especially to some of the students I mentor, like there is a reality that exists, right? But just make that standard of excellence your brand. So it really just becomes what you do, and it just becomes you. And like you said, you mix that with your own identity, and it doesn't become you doing the most anymore. It just becomes you doing you. That's dope. Anyone else want to speak to that?
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, that's dope.
So also, as a Black dancer in a studio space, surrounded by not a lot of other Black dancers, it's difficult to know when to jump in when something doesn't feel right. And oftentimes I feel the confidence when I have other folks like me within the space to speak up, or I feel like I should, right? If it's just me and I'm enduring something by myself, it's very different when then there's 2 or 3 other, Black artists or POC artists that are in the space with me. I feel an obligation to then stand up. And that's something that I'm navigating, I think, every collaboration that I do. And it's always little things that, people may not realize is harmful, and noting them improves your collaboration every single time, I find. So the moments that I do speak up and I say, hey, did you know, or this is affecting me, or this is affecting us, or this isn't right, it's come back with positive and a change. It doesn't change fully, but it changes a little bit, enough to keep that collaboration going. I'm not losing any money, but they understand that they can't come back that way. They have to approach the situation in a different manner, which I found very helpful, having a team beside you when making those conversations. Now, there's been other instances when I first started collaborating on like my very first big grant. I was a student researcher for university, and everything was on Zoom, and I overheard a conversation that I wasn't supposed to. They didn't know, like she had forgotten that I was there because her back was turned to the camera and she was having a conversation with another professor. And it was along the lines of like, I can't believe I lost my job, blah, 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 blah. If I was a Black male, I would still have it. And she was complaining about that. You know, this is like a white feminist who was complaining about, you know, folks basically getting work because they were, you know, of color. And she kept going. And then suddenly the other professor who was facing me on the other side, his eyes just went like huge. And she understood what she had done. She turned back around and said, I didn't mean it like that, da, 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 da. But either way, this grant went on for another 3 years after that. And I was still an assistant on the project. And it was my very first grant. This artist had a big name. I was published in some of the work and research. And there was one project that I was kind of leading with my university that could have been amazing. And my heart wasn't in it. Like after that situation, I kind of took a step back and did the bare minimum at that point. I felt like I was going above and beyond before that point. And then I took a step back and said, you know, I don't know if I want this work to be under this person's name. So I still went through the process of doing the things, but I didn't go above and beyond. I didn't destroy my name within the process, but I didn't progress it in that situation. And I don't know if there's a better way that I could have handled it. Went to her directly and said, you know what, I'm leaving the project because of this. And I don't think you should be, having these conversations with anyone, let alone when, you know, there's other Black folks in the room. But that was my very first, I think, kind of negative experience within like a professional art setting after graduation that I still think about today, you know. And there's always, I find that there's always like a right time for certain people to receive information and to receive feedback. And I'm very cautious of that. You know, within the industry that I'm in, within the small community that I'm in, I will always speak up about something, but it's when is the right time to do it.
That was cool. Like, speaking up is the hardest thing to do, but the most rewarding thing to do at the same time. You know, we can talk, I'm sure, for hours about those that experience the same thing. I think we all share that, but we can speak tremendously on those moments that we actually did, because they stand out that much. I think for a lot of artists, our work really is so tied in with our emotions and everything else. You know, it's hard to have these conversations because we know, you know, everything we've done is, we're so vulnerable. It's all out there, and you know, with these conversations, things are going to come back as well. You know, how do we overcome those things? You know, how do we get to a point of speaking up? Does it always have to be a length of time of just, you know, taking the abuse, or taking, you know, the everything that comes with, like you said, you know, those negative things that come with collaborations and different things like that? You know, do we just sit there and take it to a point where we can't take it no more and then speak up? Or are there ways to get to a point, or practice getting to a point where we can speak up and not have to endure that? No, I'm just putting that out there as well. I'm just throwing things out there.
Oh, and I have another example of, you know, when that actually happens, and it's successful. So as I said, like, there's instances where, you know, I feel the need to speak up right away. And those have been the best, I think the best outcomes. And one of those is one of my collaborators, you know, being a art gallery, right? And they're hosted by the government, you know, it's government policy and procedures, and it's a system. It's a big system to navigate. And every time we finish our contracts, we have, you know, kind of like a reflection wrap up. And, you know, there's 3 of us that host our podcast, and after every season, we lay everything on the floor. Every bad thing that happened, every good thing that happened, everything that we would appreciate changed or not happen again. And even though it's been a very slow process of small changes happening every year, they're still happening. And I think that it's important, especially for like government systems, to never let that slide.
Yeah.
And to keep that, like, it's kind of like, keep that gentle conflict. I don't know. The whole time. And every year it gets a little bit better. Because if we don't do it, then it's never going to change. And that's that's an instance that we could have been like, you know what, we're done. We've had enough. We're over. But then, you know, we lose something also, that we couldn't support ourselves as they are our sponsors, and the beautiful magic that happens when we are actually all in the space together.
And that's a very difficult space that a lot of us will get those opportunities as artists when work on these amazing projects that involve, you know, city governments, different, you know, platforms like that, and different bodies up like that. And it, again, you know, I've been there. I finished one a couple of years ago, maybe just the beginning of last year, and being someone who likes to be on the ground, who likes to who's usually on the other end asking for the support, this and that, whatever, you know, here it is, I'm on a different hat, I'm wearing a different hat, I'm on the other side, and I'm delivering something. But, you know, when you're on that end, you're like, okay, so why can't we do this? And they're like, no, that's not how we do it. You can't give everything. You might be here, but, you know, and that system kind of comes in, and you're now a part of that. Very difficult place, and I'm glad you brought that up. And I think, you know, it's all learning. It's all, you know, part of the process of learning. And I think for me, I just start now at this point, I just look at it as, okay, cool, I'm supposed to go through this for the next big thing. Because if I don't go through this, then I won't have this skill to get me through the next one. So now I start to look at when I'm faced with obstacles or these speed bumps, I look at them like that, and I'm like, all right, cool. I put on my armor and I just go through the obstacle course, you know, because somewhere it's gonna teach me something. Yeah, it might suck, but you know, that's what helps me, you know, really get through it. I was just coming to you, Aaron, because I remember that you wanted to speak on something. So don't worry, I didn't forget about you.
That's all. It's all good. I think for me, something I've learned, like, kind of as I enter my mid-career, is that when I was younger, I spent so much time trying to impress people. I spent so much time, especially trying to impress East Asian ADs, because I thought that's where my community was. But I think during pandemic, what I realized is if I cannot be my full self on a gig, I don't take it anymore. It doesn't matter if they're a big theater. It doesn't matter if they're Stratford Festival or Shaw. Or if I'm going into those scenarios and I know I'm going to lose a bit of myself because I'm working a big contract with a regional theater coming up, and I know being in that space makes me lose a bit of myself. And I know that that's a sacrifice I have to make because I have to make money. So it's just a question of like, how much do I speak up? Or am I just there to like toe the line and make sure? But in general, I give myself room for one of those collaborations a year, and it has to pay me. There's that triangle, right? It's like, what is it? For the art, for the money or for the connections, right? And if it doesn't hit 2 of those 3, you get rid of it. So I only give myself 1 space for a money connections thing, because if I do too much of that, then I lose myself. But in general, like when I am engaged by a theater, I always ask them, why do you want me? Whenever I'm engaged as a dramaturg or director, I'm like, why me? And if they're able to articulate that and we connect, then I proceed with the gig. But like, I think the older I grow, the more I realize that I only want to work with people who like really, really excite me and are excited by me, who look at each other, and not to say that we're not critical of each other, but we're like, let's go, let's move this boulder together, as opposed to them watching me move the boulder and be like, hey, you're doing a pretty good job. But yeah, I only give myself space for 1 of those money gigs a year, just because like I know for myself I can't handle that. But then as a result, the fee that exists there has to be enough that I can like reduce myself and just be a head down worker. And I guess if I can think about what I would tell my younger artist self, that's it. It's just like, you're trying to impress the wrong people. The people you're trying to impress are people who don't give a fuck about you. So yeah, I don't know. I just want to respond to that, because I think it's interesting hearing both perspectives from a government and also working for a major regional theater shack. And yeah, I'm so curious how we protect ourselves in those experiences, but also like while still feeding our artist. So yeah, I just want to put that out there. But I guess I'm more radical in that. I'm like, you don't like me, go away.
I mean, I think it's the perfect way to exist.
Love it. I love it. I love it. I remember, Aaron, you also, when you were introducing yourself, there was something you had mentioned. I was trying to remember back that you wanted to speak on, and I'd love for you to bring that back again. Yeah.
So I'm developing work in a new way. I think that's something that like I when I got this panel, I was like, okay, what are we talking about? And I was like, oh, it's collaboration, as you began this panel with. Something I'm really trying to do in my processes now is I work in theater, and engaging other disciplines in sooner. So like I'm doing a show right now where one of the characters creates visual art. That's what she's an artist. She builds pieces of art. So something that we're doing is we're getting the artist in early. So like as we generate drafts, we're going to throw things at them. We're going to ping back and forth. We've been doing that with a composer through the years and our choreographer, but like building script with them and building things kind of like at the same time is something like I'm really passionate about right now, because I've never worked that way before. So usually I'm in a silo where I'm like, oh, I'm doing the show, and then we go into rehearsal, and then I contact design. But yeah, I think I'm really interested now, especially as we get out of pandemic, is like, how do we work more wholesomely while still like respecting everyone's time to build something? I don't know. I just think that like I've been developing this last show for 5 years. It's opening next season if we don't lose Canada Council funding. I know, right? We lost a big one, and I was like, what happened? But yeah, it's interesting, because I think one of the questions asked in this panel was like, what do mid-career young craft artists need or whatever? And my response to that would be time to incubate the work, but also like when we're programmed, in whatever capacity, actually give, not just being a mercenary, we're going to put you up, but like, how do we incubate the work for like a span of 4 to 5 years, and then we put it up when it's ready? And what resources do artists need? Because like we've all been commissioned before. We've all done that commission where we're like, oh, I wish I had more time. So I think in my future collaborations, what I really want to do is like, if you want to commission me, I want to demand more time so I can deliver you a project that we're all really, really stoked about. And I think that's what I look for in collaborators. It's like, not let's put the work up now, but like, let's see how we can make this as strong as possible over a longer period of time, and what that funding model looks like. Like, you're gonna give me a 5K commission, great, but like I'm gonna produce something that's middling, and it's something that's gonna be fine. But if you give me 5K a year to like develop this thing in a period of workshops, it's inevitably going to be stronger. So I think what I'm thinking for as I negotiate my contracts and commissions and stuff is like, how do I negotiate and fight for the time that I need, and what is the time that I need? If it takes me 4 to 5 years to put up a play, what is that when a theater approaches me? But yeah, I don't know. Those are just a bunch of rambling thoughts. But like, I think as I grow older, I'm interested in like wholesome time. Especially, we had 2 years where our industry was shut down, right? And like, I think in those 2 years, I was able to actually develop a process for myself and not rush work. So yeah, I also think too that like, it's a very colonial thing to think about like the time is this, let's get it up. And more time doesn't mean I'm lazy. So yeah, it's a bunch of offerings, no answers, but just a bunch of offerings.
I feel all of those things. And as like an emerging artist, it is very much like, hey, can you do this? Yes, yes, go, 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 go. And there isn't a lot of time to like stop and reflect or even revisit past works that you're like, oh, that actually really spoke to me and I want to dig into that deeper. But then it's like, okay, it's already done and gone. Now, how do I, continue that process on my own? Or how do I figure out ways, I guess, to extend that network or collaboration, which is, I guess, kind of along the lines of what I'm interested in. And I really enjoy when folks also have that same want, a lot of the times there's like, oh, it's a festival or a show. In the work that I do is like dance and performing arts. You do the thing, you get it done. But then the people that are like, hey, let's talk about this some more are the people that I keep in my close network.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It shows the want to keep the support coming for like the longevity of the art, but the longevity of like my artistic career and theirs together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for that. Both of you. That is a very difficult one. And I know Aaron, you spoke on, there was something else you spoke on, was getting the artists in the collaboration a lot sooner. So I don't want to forget about that piece. About the time though, I've been on both sides and I'm someone who always asks for time. But then it's like, I have this passion of also being in this industry that's driven by pop culture. I like shoes. I like designing shoes. I like fashion. I like, a lot of pop culture scene, the brands and stuff or whatever. And that world, when it comes to time, on the other end, there's a lot of that industry, there's a lot of money poured in because there's a lot of money to get out, but literally you're dealing with something that's a trend. And if you're an artist that's being commissioned to deal with something that's trending, it's this world where it's only because I'm on the other side of that world and I've seen the other side of that world, I understand that, wow, you know what, we have to get it out in this time. If we don't get it out in this time, who can we get? And then it's like, wow, okay, you know what, we're going to give you the biggest bag you've ever seen of loot, but we don't care about anything that's happening in your life because we need it by Wednesday. And it sucks because as an artist, it's like, okay, why can't we have a conversation? Why do I always get called, at this time? Why is it always a pressure thing? Why can't I show you what I can deliver to this project to make it even better, And I have gotten to that point, but, no one listens to you. It's almost like they only started listening to me after I started hitting those jobs. After I started hitting those bullshit jobs, you know what I mean? I hit 5 of those bullshit jobs, stressed out, losing hair, losing friends, everything out. And now they're like, hey, you had some suggestions, right? And it sucks. And for someone who really advocates for everything that Itandi said just now, and Aaron too, it sucks for me to sit here and say, that's, it's part of the business because it's shitty, but there is that other side where art does really play a huge part in things that are trending, things that people like to see at that moment, and they come to us to deliver those things. So even in theater, sometimes it's like, wow, the pandemic was just, we can't go another year because we got to put out a play of the pandemic, or if we did wait too long, people are going to forget what it is. You know what I mean? It's like, shoot, you got to do this now. So it's one of those things where it's really hard to answer being on both sides. If I'd never seen the other side, I'd be here saying, it's about time that we get these opportunities and to speak to people and have them hear what we have to offer. But sometimes there's not even time for that. You know, it's the VP who had an idea, who just wants to get it done before he flew out for 2 weeks, right? And that sometimes is the reality. But to your first point, Aaron, getting artists in earlier, I think that's really cool. And artists, I think now it's a really cool time with a lot of companies that are listening to, they want to work that way. There's this new shift of breaking, like you said, the colonial way, you know, or box that's kind of built around us. There's this huge, but they're looking for suggestions, and I think there's something to speak on that. Artists have been silenced for so long. Now you're expecting suggestions from artists, and a lot of the artists who, you know, either been mentored or sometimes, you know, mentored by other artists who said, you know, they're not going to listen to you, or just being an artist for so long, just understanding that, and not now that it's a time that we might not know that it's a time that people want to hear our suggestions, that this is the time to speak up. You know, we've been silenced for so long, we just don't want to say nothing no more. But what I find is that's what's probably happening right now, and that's what is happening right now in a lot of the circles I've been in. They want the artists in a lot earlier. They're seeing how that can change a project or really amplify a project for the better. And them understanding the full scope of the job, an artist understanding the full scope of the job, how much better it is for the artist as well. We're not in the dark anymore. You know, we're now creating from a place of passion because we feel a part of the job. You know what I mean? And so it's important we really speak up to be a part of the process, because I feel like, you know, those stages are really listening right now. Does anyone want to kind of speak to that? No? Yes, Aaron.
I think just to speak to that too, when I show up to commission, do a gig, I come with a team already. And like the show I'm working at right now, it's a table tennis show. But like the whole concept is when people play table tennis, it's done through contemporary dance and sound comes out of their body. So like in developing the piece, I'm armed already with a choreographer and a sound designer who's been building motifs with me for a year. So when you commission that show and take it in, I know that like if you want to develop Ping, you need 3 of us on, and we can deliver this in X amount of time. Like I come with a calendar. So I'm like, oh, you want me in 2 years? This is what I can deliver. If you want me in 1 year? This is what I can deliver. But if you really want to incubate this show, you can give me 3 years and I can put all 3 up and we can make this happen. So I think just like speaking to your thing about time too, because I'm also able to work fast, but I think too, it's like knowing my own process now and also knowing like what can I get done in these increments of time. Like I did a commission for a university ages ago, where it was like 3 months, give us a show, dramaturg, make it work. And I was like, okay, great. I know I can do this, and I know I can do this element well, and I'll remove other things that I would have if I had a longer period. But yeah, I think part of being able to negotiate, as you were talking about, is like knowing your own process as an artist, right? Like what exactly do you need in terms of deliverables? And I think when I'm the strongest is when I know my process very well and I'm able to actually execute it because I know what steps I'm following to achieve the product. And I think, especially as a younger artist, I think my biggest folly, well, I had many follies, but one of my larger follies was that like I didn't know what my process was. I didn't know what I needed to hold myself accountable to actually deliver product and deliver strong work, or a process that wouldn't destroy me.
That's cool. I think something I'm gathering from this panel here that's really important is, especially for mid-career and artists who are just starting their careers off, is showing up professional, showing up organized, and getting to that place where, you know, you could at least hold your ground in a collaboration or in that space, because of how you've presented yourself off the bat. That's worked for me. I was in talking to some students that I mentored just last semester, and they were surprised when I told them when I left school, I had a manager. And they were like, how do you do that? And I was like, you know what? It sounds amazing. And it really and truly, it's just the title you really have to carry. But my management was a good friend that really trusted and believed in my work. And I said, hey, you know what? I want to get into these shows. She was very professional, had the skills to draft the right emails and proposals for grants and stuff. And, you know, I put the management title on it. And as a young artist, you watch people jump back like, oh my gosh, you have to speak to your manager? You know, they stutter when they see it. And it's been the most powerful thing for me to, you know, have how I present myself, how people see me jump off the bat. And yes, you know, going to some of these spaces as a Black artist, you know, they see that it's like, wow, you know, it's just this novelty when really it's just really business, you know. So again, you know, I preach to a lot of young artists and I noticed on this panel that we all share the same thing, which is showing up very professional and which helps in collaborations, which is the topic today.
Well, I mean, I feel like even that yourself and your manager is a collaboration. And I feel like every pair, every group of people, there's like strong suits and there's things that people excel at more than others, you know? And like for me, management and admin is not one of my strong suits. I've done it, you know, I've been on that side of just being like an art admin or manager. And it's hard when you have the passion to be an artist. It's hard to kind of navigate all of that while maintaining your own artistic practice. And it really is like multiple jobs. So it comes to a point when like, especially right now, when we're still in that like demand, high demand, Black POC artists, and to do everything is impossible. It's not normal. Maintain your house, maintain your family, maintain, you know, cooking for yourself, showing up for gigs, doing multiple tasks at once. There's always something that gets left behind. And that managerial position would be a game changer for a lot of us, you know, if we could find that and have that. And it's something that I've always kind of thought about, like, hey, like, should I just hire someone to do all this stuff for me? Because it's something that's really falling off my plate that I can't maintain. So it's actually nice hearing that, you know, you have a manager and that it's worked and that it's a good thing.
Yeah, thank you. And it wasn't, and I'll tell you, you know, just how I did it. You know, it's back then, obviously I didn't have the money for these things. You know, I just Googled, you know, what, you know, managers get. And I thought it was like 10 to 15%. It's so funny. I said to my friend, I just thought to myself, man, 10%, that's so small. I don't even know if I can do it. But I really wanted to do it. And I had like no sales yet. And I just said, all right, how about this? I'll give you 20%. And she said 20%. And we went to an art show and she just really did some research with me on just the art scene. And she saw what art was selling for. And she realized, you know, she's in a corporate world of people who, these are the buyers. So now work and doing all that research. And next thing you know, the next show I went, I did a piece. She came to look at it and she said, all right, I got a system and a price for you and a what you call it, an equation to figure this out. But she already had something in her head. And just like that, you know, my first piece, my second showing, I sold a piece for $2,500. And I'm looking at her 20% and saying, wow. And it gave her incentive like you wouldn't believe, right out the jump. And from there, I could tell you any sale after that never went below that, you know, for the first year. And this is someone who's now, she's talking to colleagues and finding out what shows they're going to and saying, I have an artist, and sending my portfolio to them. And this is just someone that's right under my nose that I can trust. Yeah. So sometimes you don't have to look
far.
You don't have to look far. You know, that person might just be right under your nose, and it's just a conversation and a plan, to be honest. Yeah. I hope that helps. Yeah.
Yes.
Shakeil, you haven't said anything in a while. Let me hear you. Let me hear you.
I'm a big listener because I've learned that like dancers using your voice is a challenge within
Mhm.
itself. But I've
Mhm.
also learned to absorb and then absorb, reflect, and then provide something of deeper insight. So I'm just absorbing and reflecting, and I do agree with a lot of the points said in terms of collaboration. I feel like all art, essentially, to make successful, needs some level of collaboration because you can't just sit in the dark and expect things to thrive, even if it's like a collaboration with audience and viewers of that art. You know, so you always need another entity in order to help your art thrive. And
Mhm.
for me, what I've learned is take advantage of opportunity. So I find a lot of young artists just want to get the job and want to, make the money and want to do all that stuff. But take the time to understand your wants and needs, what you love, what you don't like, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. I know from performance standpoint, there's residency programs out there, there are classes, there are even like more established artists that you can contact and just speak with. So I encourage, as someone like I taught at Sheridan, I encourage people to go to people you're interested in. Follow your interests first. Don't follow the trends. Follow your interests, and then from there you'll see where you kind of can find your groove. Not to say trends are bad. I know that was mentioned earlier. But I found myself, graduating from like a white contemporary dance school, wanting to get into a very specific company. Now looking back on that, it was not in line with my interest. It was just popular, right?
Mhm.
So I think really understanding what you want first will help deepen your relationships when you collaborate. And you will have more to bring to the table rather than, I like dance. You can be like, well, I'm a Black dancer who studied an Afro-Caribbean movement, who also has contemporary dance influence, who loves storytelling and musical. You get what I'm saying? So like the more you spend time on yourself, understanding who you are, the deeper you can go with these collaborations. And I feel like people sort of skim over that because they, especially post-secondary, because you spend so much time in school, you're like, great, I have the skills, I'm ready for the job. But I truly feel being an artist, you're a forever student, right? You're always learning. So yeah, that's where I'm at, like absorbing as much as possible and reflecting so I can provide. Yeah.
So that's cool. Trafalgar campus?
Toronto Dance Theater.
Oh, you said Sheridan. You teach at Sheridan.
Oh, and I did teach at Sheridan in Oakville. Yeah.
Hey, Oakville, yeah, Trafalgar.
Yeah.
That was I was in the animation program out there.
Ah.
And yeah, that's my old stomping grounds too. And again, that was a time for me where, as you know, out there, you're in a different space. I was coming from Malvern in Scarborough and coming out there into a program, with my Tim boots, clean Tim boots and gear on, and having them looking at me like I just came off a spaceship, because it was just like, I was the only brother in the chorus, and
oh yes, I know that.
yeah, and trying to navigate. But like you said, it really sometimes and I took animation because it was the popular thing. I went back. It was that's what's going to make you money. All the stats on these American studios that are doing amazing things. You could be here. You know what I mean? And when I was finished there, I actually went back to do at OCAD. I went to OCAD after to do classical art and art anatomy and illustration, just stuff that I liked, stuff that I guess artists would say, if you're doing animation, why would you go back and do that? Like, you've reached the top, but that wasn't me, it wasn't me. It wasn't what I was feeling. For someone who was even new and welcoming art as a career, you know? Oh, cool. There's a question coming in. You know, at that time, really even deciding to make art a career, it was just interesting time. You know, a lot of stuff was really new to me, but I made it happen, realized what I wanted to do, and came out and just said, okay, you know, galleries, you know, here's another space, but I'm kind of ready for it. You know, I want to be, you know, that Black classical artist, you know, tearing up the commercial art world, you know, in my Jordans, you know. and that's pretty much what it was for me. There's a question that came in. It's how do I navigate a large city and network in large communities? That's very good. You know, you got to start somewhere. I can answer that. I started for myself, just there's a lot of invitations for shows. I mean, now it's so easy. I look on Instagram and I see invitations and shows everywhere. You know, it wasn't like that back in the day. It was just really kind of like, you hear about it, you kind of have to go out. You know, shows, a bulletin's not going to come in front of you and be like, here's an opportunity. You know, you have to also be the viewer. A lot of times I find the artist is just, you want to stay on the art side. You know, I did hair for a long time too. And I used to say that to a lot of barbers. You can't just stay in your own barbershop. Sometimes go get a haircut at another barbershop. You know, you don't have to go to the guy that you see cutting every day next to you. Like, you can network, build that network, because you never know when that property goes. You might need a relationship at another shop to handle you. Same with the arts. A lot of times, you know, we just, as the artists, we're worried about our arts, and we might not go to another show. We might not look at the calendar and say, okay, you know what? There's all these theater shows. I have to hit all of these. You know, sometimes there's fans of what we do, and we naturally go out to these things, but there's also that artist that might, you know, not get out there. And I think that's important to your first question, is start being the viewer, you know, take off your hat and engage in the arts that you're interested in, or the art that you do. See who else is in your, you know, world, your environment, your industry, and then start networking with people, you know, start talking to, I like being the fly on the wall. I like going to another art show and then talk to the people that are there and say, you know, they don't need to know I'm an artist. It's not always, hey, Kwame, I'm an artist. Sometimes it's just me just there, like, talking to someone and saying, what did you like about this? Because then I know, you know. Then meeting the artist, and just, you don't even have to say your artist, that's their moment. You know, sometimes I just like to go incognito and just say, hey, you know, great show, I love your work, and just keep it moving, you know, because it's not about me at that moment. It's about me networking, and trust me, they'll remember you. You know, that person will remember you. But I find in a large city with so many things going on, you just have to really just get out there and make those networks. And somewhere in that world, if that's what you do, you're going to find someone there that's going to say, hey, what do you do? That might be the moment that you get your opportunity, or it start to expand your network, you know? Because again, if you want to design shoes and there's a cool pop artist, trust me, that person that can give them the opportunities for shoes will be at their show. So it's sometimes you go there and you say, hey, I got to find that person in the room and make it happen for myself. So yeah, in big cities with many opportunities, I just try to embrace myself in those opportunities. I think this is a question for performing arts. So performing theater dance artists work with musicians to develop and collaborate on the music for new artwork.
Yes.
There we go.
All the time. I can speak really quickly. I have my own artist collective called Drifted, and we're a group of Black artists, and we do many different things. One of my collaborators is a producer, and I use him to produce all of my work. And it pushes him almost, because I'm kind of in, I would say, like the alternative world, and he's like a boom bap artist, but providing him these connections with other collaborators that I work with, and bringing him consistently on, every project has helped a lot. He knows now what I like, what I prefer, and also it's allowed me to experiment myself in a new genre. So like I didn't come in as like a musician or anything like that, because I love, multidisciplinary work. Of course, I'm going to jump in there and like put the headphones on and like grab the mic and like see what I can put myself in. And I find those kind of collaborations almost my favorite. It's like, I don't really know anything about producing, but like, if I can like sit in there and watch and learn and grow from, an original thought or idea, then I'm there. And I love putting other people at the table that I'm at as well.
Yeah, just add on to that. Sound is so important to my work as a director and playwright. Like, the show I'm developing, I'm doing this big 30-year project about a Chinese restaurant, and we brought a composer in immediately because we were like, what does the restaurant sound like? Okay, how do we abstract it? In our show, music comes out of this jukebox. So we have all these Chinese songs that we were able to throw back at them and say, okay, we can't use these because they're licensed. What motifs are you hearing that you can repeat? And then she would build them on her keyboard, and then we take that back and write whole scenes revolving around the motifs we listen to. I love working with musicians. I also write musical theater book, so I work with composers all the time. But I think collaborations with musicians are often the best when it's not mercenary of, hey, do this thing, where it's like, okay, I have an idea. Can you build something? Then I'll build something, and then we'll go back in. But yeah, I love it. Also, going earlier, the question, how do you navigate a big city and growing your network? I find, for me, like, networking always feels weird because I'm like, oh, it feels like I want something from you. But I think about what Shaq said earlier, and also what other folks said earlier, was just like, follow your curiosities. Like, does someone make you curious? Reach out to them if you like their work and see what can happen. I think a lot of my best collaborators are because they did a weird thing that I liked, and like, I elevate them as much as possible. And when people ask for people for gigs, I always put them forward if I can't do the gig, or if they're better for the gig, I'll put them forward. But yeah, I see a bunch of stuff, but if I like someone, I always reach out because it comes from a genuine place. Again, looking at my younger self, I remember when I was younger, all I tried to do was kiss AD's asses. I was like, wow, oh my God. It was so ingenuine. It was so fake. And people saw right through that. But now I'm like, you do something weird and I like that. How can we, like, even if I don't really want to work with you, I want to know more about it. So I always see a bunch of shit and then I lead with my curiosity. And then it becomes like a genuine conversation. Whether we work together or not is irrelevant. We both left with more knowledge. And that's super important. And also another colleague, because like, art is lonely. Like, I can't imagine being in that shoe world of like having all those designer deadlines and just churning it out, right? Like, yeah, I think networking is a chance for you also to feed your sense of loneliness as an artist and feed what kind of makes you weird, and find a connection in that. So I don't know. I think of it as like a weird version of dating, except I'm not in it for sex. I'm just in it to like make another connection so we can feed our artist.
Aaron, I don't even want to stop you. Like, I just want to hear you just you all said some really cool things there, though. Are there any questions from anyone? I know. Cool. Do you feel Canada has more opportunity when developing your own initiative, creative collaborations? Canadian. I'm American and Canadian, so I wonder if there are differences between the US and Canada. That's actually really cool. Ooh, wow, that's really cool, and it's so funny. There's so many. I think there's so many examples of that can lean towards that being a thing. I think with anything with collaborations, you're stronger. Also, too, a lot of times for myself, I always think about that American market and knowing that, I do want things to build and progress as a Canadian, to amplify itself in Canada. But sometimes those markets are limited, and I think that is a reality. When you go into, and I'm sure that might be the same for theater. I don't want to speak on it. I'm not sure, but for myself as a visual artist, again, galleries, Black art galleries, Black galleries are thriving, in America. Galleries that are presenting themselves at the same level as the Art Gallery of Ontario, and let alone international galleries in America, and private opportunities as well. There is that engine that is over there, and I feel like sometimes those collaborations that you're doing collaborations in Canada just help to, for myself to, build yourself as a brand, and sometimes grabs the attentions abroad, which I guess essentially expand your market. But someone might have a different view from that. I'd love to hear how that works out in some of these other industries, or how that's seen in some of these other industries like dance or theater, performing arts.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
The question is, do you feel Canada has more opportunity when developing your initiative or creative as a collaboration? Or when developing your initiative, creative collaborations?
Well, I don't think there's more or less, there's just difference.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked with American dancers, and right now I'm working with American actors and actually talking to them about this. Like, what's the difference between the two worlds? And it's just the intention. Also, keep in mind the demographic in the States. There's a lot more Black artists. There's a lot more competition in the performing aspect, anyways. So there's a lot more of a me focus, whereas I find here, based off of the information that I've gathered, in Canada, it's more focused on the product. We're more successful when we focus on what's the thing that we're trying to support rather than what's the thing that will support me.
Yeah, that's interesting. I find that really interesting. And just also stepping back and like watching dancers kind of grow virtually. I find that like I'd heard that like, in the States, it's like you actually have to be an influencer to get any dance jobs. It's like you have to have like you have to show like you have to have like so many followers to be booked for something. And like it's a very different place. Whereas I feel like here, yeah, about the product, the thing that you're working towards together.
Yeah, I haven't done anything in the States yet, but I was at a reading yesterday where an artist was from the States, and he was talking about it, that like he's a Hong Kong migrant, and he finds that there are more international like third culture artists here, where in the States often it's very much like this is the hyphen American identity, like that feels really big, where I feel like I don't know, maybe it's the mosaic versus nationality thing, and like in nationalism versus mosaic thing. But I don't want to co-opt his words, but I do feel that like here, like immigrant and migrant and like English not as a first language populations, like the collaborations there feel stronger with institutions. But I'm speaking on my ass right now. I have no idea. But I remember he was saying that, and I just took pause for that. I also think too that like I've had the I guess the experience of working across the country too. Like collaborations differ based on the province you're in. Like I was just in Winnipeg for a gig, and the work they're putting out is very different. Even the dance they're putting out is very different based on how their community was founded, but also like who is going to see those shows. So I don't know, it also depends on your city. Like I would say a Vancouver theater production is different from a Winnipeg theater production, is different from a Toronto theater production, is definitely different from a New York pop theater production. And I don't know if like it speaks as the States as like this universal monolith, but I do think that like because America, as I understand it, and this is me speaking out of my ass right now, there's more of a sense of, I feel, national identity in terms of like the way their country was like founded, in terms of the push of their country. That I feel that like maybe there's more unity in terms of like the drive of the work there, what am I talking about? I have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm gonna stop talking. I just went to New York recently and saw a bunch of shows, and now I'm thinking really hard about like what makes a show successful in Canada versus America and why some of them connect and some of them don't. Like when Dear Evan Hansen was here, it didn't do very well, right? But like other shows that come up here live up here. So like it's something I'm mulling over right now. So yeah, if Americans are watching this on the live stream, I have no idea anything about your culture, but I am fascinated by it because I find, especially the theater work in America, feels so different, and I find that juicy and exciting.
I don't know if this is like the same across Canada, but I know a thing that I kind of noticed within, reading, I read a lot of applications and stuff like that, that in Nova Scotia here, you have to do so many things. And this is kind of segue into the next question. You have to do so many things to be successful within, the field of art. You can't just do one thing. And I don't know if that draws from like Canada's, multicultural background, that kind of like bleeds over into like a multidisciplinary practice. But I'm finding that a big trend here in Nova Scotia. And I think that it's starting to kind of like catch on everywhere. It's like people are realizing and wanting to do multiple things instead of just being like, I'm just going to do one thing. That's what I've noticed in Canada. I'm not sure if it's the same in the States or if it's the same through every province. And I guess leading into, do you all work on your art practice full time? Yeah, I'm a full-time artist, but I don't just do one thing. So being a photographer, being a jeweler, being a dancer, and then also being a contemporary fine artist are like 4 things that I do under the stream of art making. And sometimes they come together, sometimes they're separate. Like I just finished an event that was for the city and I was the photographer, right? Not everything came into play there, but the sum of all of it gives me actually more time for myself, for my family, than it would if I was working, a 9-to-5 to support my practice. And the transition that I made into that was scary. And I think I cried for like a day because I quit my job. And I was really nervous and it was terrifying. And then, month after month, gig after gig, they kept coming in, they kept rolling, I kept working, I kept accepting calls, maintaining my networks. And I'm now at a point that I can like comfortably say that I think I can do this for a long time.
Yeah, so I'll answer as well. Being a performer, my body is my office. Can't really leave it. So it's there all the time. I'm working on it. And I believe everything that you've experienced up until this second will inform what's going to happen beyond this second, right? So even this is like a facet of my artistic practice. Everything that you choose to surround yourself with or that you don't choose does affect your artistic practice. So I just feel like living itself is an indirect artistic practice. So yes, I guess it's full time because I can't really stop. Even when I'm taking a break so I can feel myself for other things, so I have the energy to go back to that. So that's my thought, but also because I am a performer, so I use the body, the voice. Uh, how long did it take you to make that transition? And I guess would this apply to me, but I guess like I'm always there, I'm always present, I'm always an artist. Even if I was like, we use this analogy a lot, but flipping burgers at McDonald's, I'm still an artist. So I don't feel that it's a big transition. It's just a switch of intention and focus over time. And just because it goes one way doesn't mean it can't go back. So it's kind of like a spectrum that you can choose your own adventure, I feel. It's not like okay, I have a Joe job and now I'm going to be a dancer, right? It's a nonlinear path. And what kept you going during that process? I strongly believe if you love it, you make it work. Being in high school, grades were up here. My parents were like, go to med school. I said, no, I want to do art. They were like, huh? But I said, I love this. They said, okay, and been going for it ever since. So I strongly believe if you truly love something, you'll find ways to make it work. That in tandem with having a specifically vague intention of being successful. Okay? Because a lot of people will have like one goal. I want to be a dancer for Alvin Ailey and dance in this specific thing. That is so specific that if I don't get it, my world is crushed. But if I'm like, I want to perform and tell stories, that opens up a multitude of options. So
Yeah. Thinking about this too, I got lucky. Most of the reason I work is because of luck, not because I'm good. And then I prove I'm good when I'm given opportunity. Remember in 2020, something happened. They were looking for a bunch of diverse teachers. Something happened in like May of 2020, and like we were all getting phone calls. We were all getting phone calls. Everyone was like, hey, you're not white, come do this thing. So I was a product of that. Teaching especially. I know it was so weird, and I took everything because I was like, it's pandemic. I'm not going to be like my white colleagues. I'm going to work. So the only reason I'm able to work as a professional artist at a full-time job is because universities pay my bills. Like I direct at theater universities in theater schools, and like that sustains me. And I can do other projects as well, but I'll be lying. The bulk of my income is freelance theater directing at universities because it's a long contract. It's like a 10-week process sometimes, and they're paying you like a theater process is usually like 3 to 4 weeks, but they're paying you a significant amount of money. So that was my big transition when I was like, oh, my income's doing really well because I got lucky. Which is, I think goes back to networking because I was nice to people and like, et cetera, and I was around. And when I was doing shows, I was always inviting artistic leaders out. So then a snowball effect started happening. But what kept me going before pandemic, before the events of May 2020, my Joe job was something that I could separate from myself, and I would not take it home with me. It was I was super weird on the job. I catered. I wouldn't make any friends. I just look in a straight line and do the job. And also catering has a flexible schedule where like you can do a shift and then vanish for a few months and then come back and do 7 shifts. I also am very good at winning grants. So that's what kept me going. No one was hiring me for I think the first like 10 years of my career. Only like last year I started getting seriously hired. I just got very good at self-funding my own projects and not relying on box office, especially as artists making your own work, like figuring out that granting system immediately and figuring out how to write incredibly strong grants helps sustain me. It also helps when like I wasn't working a lot, helped me work in commission projects or self-started projects. So I was never working for free. And that's something I'm really, really big about for artists right out of school and all the students I teach. If you're working for free, you need to be getting something exceptional out of the process. It needs to be something where like it is almost career changing if you're working for free. And there are opportunities like that. Like I shadowed a director, Philip Aiken, one of my favorite directors, for free because they couldn't afford to pay me, and it changed my career. Because watching that man's process and watching the way Philip works with actors was like, oh my God. So I don't know. Long story short, it's like, it's get good at writing grants, but also know that you're worth money and also know that like everything you do is worth some type of money. So get really good at finding that funding.
Well, that was really good. Thank you. Thank you for that. I think we're getting to that time. Is that right, Kevin? Yes, I think we are. I think we covered pretty much everything. Here he is. I think we covered everything. I think we have. My story is not even important. You guys heard some amazing stories. But I just touch on that like quickly. Barber, artist, you know what I mean? I played the same role. And yeah, you know, finding that moment of transition is crazy important. Crazy important. But yeah, today I think it was amazing. Great talk on collaborations, and I know we went off. You know, thanks to Aaron, we covered so many other amazing things, and you know everyone else. Shakeil, Itandi. Oh my gosh. You know, I'm meeting all you for the first time as well, and you know, this is another opportunity to stay in touch. You know, I hope to stay in touch, and I think everyone, you know, did exactly, you know, made that effort, that took that foot forward to come here. And, you know, we all have to connect and stay in touch. And this is all part of that journey of building, you know, the art community and our own art communities.